First, everybody turn off your cell phone or anything else you have that makes noise, right? I'm delighted to be here to introduce the 100-year-old mountain play at the Mill Valley Library First Friday program. My name is Kathy King. I'm a library board trustee. We are appointed by the Mill Valley City Council to advise our city librarian. Currently, we're working on a new strategic plan, so we're going to be looking for input from all of you. You will see surveys, solicitations of your input on the library website, so please participate. And let me know if you have any comments or concerns about the library. It's been a pleasure for me to work with our outstanding city librarian, Angie Brenner, and her excellent staff. Special thank you to the Mill Valley Library Foundation and friends for their generous support of these programs. Yeah. And also thank you to the Mountain Play donors David Newland and Associates and Barefoot Winery for donating the wine. My connection to the Mountain Play goes way back to when my now married 28-year-old daughter was 2.5 years old. Friends told me that Peter Pan was on top of Mount Tam. Wow, I want to go see this. So I took Carolyn and I decided we would adventure a hike down after the play. Saw Peter Pan, superb acting, fabulous singing, and flying too. It was amazing. The views on top of Mount Tam were glorious in the hike down. And springtime on Mount Tam is exhilarating. The hike was exhilarating too. It's 7.5 miles downhill, and I managed to get lost. I had Carolyn on a pack in my back, and I went down the zigzag trail instead of pipeline. Don't do that. But we made it, and Carolyn and I were hooked. So next year, the whole family had to go, and every year since, it's been an annual tradition. And we've introduced numerous friends and family to the Mountain Play, who've also brought other friends. And now it's a community celebration of American musical theater and our unique geographical location. My delight in the Mountain Play led me to be on the board of directors, and eventually I was the executive director for 7 years, and I followed in the footsteps of the remarkable Marilyn Smith, who many of you probably knew. Happily for me and the Mountain Play, Sara Pearson came along to take the Mountain Play to a new level and usher in this very exciting 100th anniversary. Sara also came to the Mountain Play by virtue of her love of theater, combined with the sheer joy of seeing it performed on top of our mountain, don't you think? That mountain belongs to us, right? Sara also served on the board of directors and has now been the executive director of the Mountain Play for 6 years. My goodness, it goes fast. Her enthusiasm and energy for the Mountain Play knows no bounds. I'm very happy to introduce Sara Pearson.
Well, I am so thrilled to have everybody here tonight. What a wonderful, wonderful crowd to be part of the birth of our 100-year book. I can't tell you, this is like birthing my third child, this book. And what a great place to have the birth, in a library. So thank you so much for coming out to see us tonight. We have such a wonderful program for you. Lots, you're going to learn a lot. I know all of you think that you know everything about the mountain play. But I betcha that you're going to learn stuff tonight that you didn't know. We are going to have some songs for you. We have a raffle going on in the other rooms, so I hope all of you signed up for the raffle, because the 2 lucky winners will get 2 Good Any Day tickets to the mountain play for this season. And they come, I think, with free rental stadium seats. So that's quite a nice little prize for nothing. And then I hope you saw, we have a table over there where our beautiful book is on display and for sale. So you could be among the first people. And you know, we only have a print run of 3,000, so you never know. You might have a limited edition copy. I'm just so thrilled to be here tonight. We are celebrating all year long. This beautiful, beautiful view is what obviously you all know, you see from the top of our wonderful theater. It is spectacular now and looks very similar to the way it looked in the old days, but for the skyscrapers, of course. But the folks who found their way up to the top of the mountain in the early days would have seen something of a similar view from the top of our mountain. We are so, so lucky, as you all really know. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the mountain play. I'm using a wonderful slideshow that was prepared by our associate producer, Eileen Grady, who is right here, and you will hear from her a little bit later. And it follows a little bit of the history that we covered in this wonderful book, which, by the way, is written by Elizabeth Batak. Elizabeth was a partner of mine. We worked at Marin Agricultural Land Trust together in the 90s and early 2000s. And she was a wonderful writer, and I was thrilled that she was willing to and excited about taking on such a huge project, because there is a lot of material about the mountain play after 100 years, and much of it is housed right here in this library, some in the Kent Room in the Civic Center, and some in the Marine History Museum in San Rafael. So there's quite a lot of wonderful information that she had to paw through and dig through to get this amazing book together. Here are a couple of guys you may recognize. Dad O'Rourke was a founder of the Tamalpais Conservation Club in the early days, which not coincidentally was founded in 1912. Another hiking club around that same time, founded in 1913, was the Alpine Club. There was an enormous hiking community and a lot of enthusiasm for hiking in those days. And people would tramp up and down Mount Tamalpais every weekend as part of these hiking clubs, and Dad O'Rourke was sort of the dean of the hikers. He was a leader. His friend Garnet Holm was a professor at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and he was a director of plays. And they were accompanied by an attorney from San Francisco named John Catlin one day. They were tramping around the mountain, and they came across a beautiful amphitheater bowl, a beautiful natural bowl, that Garnet said, this would be a great place to have a play. And he was right, actually, because that is where our amphitheater is sited and where we have been doing plays since 1913. Well, they got together and they enlisted the help of their friend, US Congressman William Kent. Kent happened to own much of the land. Ever heard that name, Kent? Kent Woodlands, Kent Field. Kent also was the first private person to ever donate land to a national park, and he actually donated the land that then became Muir Woods. Teddy Roosevelt begged him to name it Kent Woods, but Kent said no. Kent said, I want to name it after my friend John Muir. And so there it was, named after John Muir. Well, William Kent was thrilled by the idea that Garnet and John and Dad O'Rourke had, and he wanted to support it. So he joined their group, and they decided to have a play, and here it was, Abraham and Isaac in 1913. Well, it's a little different from what we're doing these days, not that much. I don't know. I will confess to you that Eileen and I in the office sometimes we play either of the two roles. We switch sometimes. It's really fun. Abraham and Isaac played on the mountain to 1,200 people who hiked or walked or took the crookedest railroad up to the top of the mountain and then hiked the 6.5 miles from the West Point in, where the train dropped them. So there were a couple of ways of getting there, and if you all think that it's kind of a big project to get up to the mountain play now, I want to tell you that you've got it easy. Well, these people, for the most part, came from San Francisco. So they took the ferry to Sausalito, then they got on the train to Mill Valley, then they took the crookedest railroad up to the West Point Inn, and then they hiked up to the Mountain Play Amphitheater in their best clothes. That looks just like our audiences now, right? Absolutely. I know I wear my finest when I go to the mountain play, but you can see there they have their picnic baskets and they're having a wonderful time doing exactly the way we do when we go up there. Well, the way down was somewhat different. The previous slide had a picture of the gravity car, and that was one of those things that the crookedest train was a steam railroad, and it pushed those gravity cars up all the way, around 281 turns. And on the way down, you could either ride the train or you could get into the gravity car, and sort of like Disney, you could take your chances that the brakes were going to work. And it really was a matter of holding onto the brakes and letting the gravity get you to the bottom safely. Well, it was an adventure always, a great outdoor adventure. When Kent became part of the mountain play in 1914, he joined the board, and he was so enthusiastic that he said, you know, I'm going to give this land to the Mountain Play Association. So the Mountain Play Association was formed in 1914. William Kent donated the amphitheater to the Mountain Play Association on the proviso that the mountain play would continue for the next 25 years. Don't tell the state park. So 25 years later, of course we were still going. And who knew it was going to be another 75 after that? But plays like Abraham and Isaac, Rip Van Winkle, used no sets, because how would you get them up there? You'd have to get them up on a burro or a donkey. There were no roads. So they used the beauty of the theater and the beautiful nature to be their backdrop with plays like Rip Van Winkle and other spectacles, morality plays. Wonderful pageantry was happening up there. Garnet Holm was not only a director, but he was also an actor. He played Adam in As You Like It in 1920 and many other roles. He was quite a character. And we all in the office just love this photograph of him. He is just a wonderful face. He has a wonderful face. There are many stories about the mountain play. As you can imagine, with a 100-year history, you're going to build up a couple of stories. Has anybody ever heard the story of the sleeping maiden or the sleeping lady? I know you have. I was always tickled when my kids were in elementary school and I would volunteer in their classes, and the teachers would very sweetly teach the children about the old Miwok legend of the sleeping maiden. And I knew that it was wrong. I knew, but I didn't say anything. Who wants to embarrass the teacher in front of the class? But the real story is that Garnet Holm was a fan of old Indian legends, and he was very interested in creating plays about the old Indian legends. And he had a friend named Dan Tothero, who was a pretty famous up-and-coming writer out of LA. He told Dan, would you please go and research the Miwok Indians that lived on Mount Tam and write a play about it? Well, Dan went away and did his research, and he came back to Garnet and he said, you know, I'm sorry, they weren't there. There weren't any Indians on the mountain. I have no evidence of that. And so Garnet said, make it up. So we have the story called Tamalpa. And Tamalpa was produced on the mountain 7 or 8 times. I can't remember, Kathy, can you? 7, 8, I'm putting you on the spot. But Tamalpa was a play that was written by Dan Tothero. He made up the whole idea of the maiden, the princess, the sleeping, the love story. And this is what it looked like when he put it on the mountain. Plains Indians and buck teepees and all kinds of very inappropriate and not at all like the Miwok Indians. But we do actually have a couple on our Facebook page. If you go to the Mountain Play Facebook page, you can see Eileen has put up a bunch of video from these old Tamalpa plays, and they are hysterical. Very not politically correct. We would never be able to do it now, but wonderful, wonderful stuff, and she's put it all to music, so you can see what it looks like. So the Sleeping Maiden is made up. The Trail of the Padres in 1931, you can see again that there is no set at all. There are people playing music, and of course there was no sound system. There's a story about God's tree at the Mountain Play where someone would climb up into the tree and talk from the tree, and that was God speaking to the people. We don't do that anymore. We now have the Grateful Dead's really terrific sound system, and it works much better. You can see the rudimentary beginnings of sets happening here in 1932 with Rob Roy. And that is what the audience looks like in the days before the amphitheater was built. Now, you remember that Garnet and Dad and John had come across this bowl. Well, it was just that. It was a grassy bowl. There weren't any stones. And what people would do is they would come and line up, and they'd sit behind each other, and then they would, as the play went on, they would slide down into the guy in front, compacting the audience in a way that the ushers today would be very, very jealous to see. But by the end of the show, it was a quite compact audience. So the Mountain Play, of course, understandably was saying, we've got to fix this problem. I mean, it's awful nice, but it'd be great if it was more comfortable. So in fact, the Mountain Play Association went about trying to create stones, and they built that first row of stones, seating. They built the first row, and it nearly killed them. How can we do this? It's way too big a job. So the ideas began percolating about how we could get a larger, really wonderful stone theater for people to be more comfortable. Along comes Emerson Knight. Emerson Knight was an architect who was hired as part of the WPA project in the 1930s. And he came to the amphitheater, and he fell in love with the amphitheater. And he had this idea that he would design a beautiful classic theater that would look like it had been there forever. And it would be like a classic Greek structure that people would use forever and ever and ever. He got so excited, he made these beautiful drawings. But there's one problem. You can't really have the CCC or the WPA working on a piece of private property. So the Mountain Play had owned this property and taken very good care of it and helped build trails and worked on the area around and did a lot of upkeep. But the association eventually realized that if we wanted this thing to go on and we really wanted there to be seating, we would have to do something different. So the association decided to deed the amphitheater itself over to the state park, which in the 20s had begun climbing up the side of Mount Tam till it had gotten right to the top, right around where the amphitheater was. So actually the state park is way post-dates the Mountain Play. We were around in 1913. They didn't get started until the 20s. So really, we were there first. But as they climbed up and we realized what a good partner they would be, the Mountain Play deeded the amphitheater to the state park, therein allowing the Civilian Conservation Corps to come in and to build this beautiful structure that we have today. Each one of those rocks, a ton. Each one of those rocks weighs a ton. And of course, they didn't have any big old machinery. They were using pulleys and rope and civilian conservation guys. Matter of fact, I was talking to Andrew Giacomini the other day, and I learned that his wife's father was a Civilian Conservation Corps builder on one of these teams. So we're going to interview him, hopefully, if we can get that to happen. But look what they did. They made an absolutely gorgeous piece of architecture, which is known nationally as one of the most pristine and beautiful examples of WPA architecture in the entire country. So look what we have in our own backyard. This is what it looks like in springtime, not when we come for our show, when all the grass is brown, but in the springtime it does have this lovely sheen of green, and we all are in love with this place. I say every time that we have new cast and there's maybe somebody in the cast who's never been up to the mountain play, I say to them, I want to be there the day you come up and see that mountain play, or come over the hill for the very first time and see that amphitheater laid out in front of you. I want to be there and see your face, because it is such an incredibly stunning thing. Well, Kathy mentioned that Marilyn Smith came in 1977, but before she came in to revive the mountain play, there was a couple of decades there where, you know, pageantry just was not the thing. It just was not, nobody was really liking it that much. So the mountain play struggled. You know, in 100 years, you're going to have some struggles, and you got to change. You got to stay with the times. Well, around the mid-60s, fewer and fewer people, audiences were diminishing, fewer and fewer people were there. And this is a photograph. In 1967, they actually had a music festival there, quite a famous one. Magic Mountain Festival, The Doors, Cream, I mean, lots of really, really famous bands played in the Mountain Theater. Well, the state park learned that weekend that they didn't really want to do that anymore. Because there were people hanging on the trees, they couldn't figure out how to keep, you know, people from coming in without, you know, and pay. It was one of those kind of chaotic, we didn't think of this. But it goes down in history as being one of the famous uses of the mountain play. Well, through the 60s, the Mountain Play Association was really struggling. The board was really struggling to figure out what to do. And they turned to Marilyn Smith, who had been very active in the Marin Symphony and other children's theater and lots of Marin County theatrical you know, activities. And she was approached by them, and she said to them, well, you all know Marilyn Smith, right? She was pretty much of a spitfire. She said, well, I will do it, but only on one condition, and that is if we get to do Broadway musicals. And so the board, having been used to spectacles and pageants, and, you know, they were a little nervous about that. And many of them, I understand that there was quite a struggle. We've never had struggles on the board since then. But they did hire her, and she did start doing musicals. And she also fixed another problem that was happening on the mountain play. There were, at that point, roads had been built up, and people were driving their cars, and they were parking them all over the place, willy-nilly-nilly. And the state park didn't like that either. So Marilyn got this great idea of bringing up school buses, and so we have the shuttle system that literally is the same system that she designed in 1977. Still works great. Those buses go up and down the mountain, and those drivers start training in April. Marilyn did musicals. You can see that sets have started to be a little bit more elaborate, although still there's quite a bit of trees behind them. She did wonderful musicals, and one of the other things she did was she hired our illustrious James Dunn. Well, you know the story of James Dunn. He's a Shakespearean director, right? Founder of the College of Marin Drama Department, and now the College of Marin Drama Department Arts Building is named the James Dunn Theater. We're so thrilled about that. But he came in and he said, well, Marilyn, I want to do Shakespeare up on the mountain. And she said, well, Jim, you can do one Shakespeare as long as you agree to do a musical next. I know I'm getting this almost right. It's good enough for government work, right? Okay. So James said he wanted to do Henry V. Well, he always said it was the best darn Henry V that nobody ever saw. And there is a picture in our wonderful book of the audience of that Henry V, and I'm telling you, there are about 20 people. But he also did other musicals, and he actually got the musical bug, didn't he? The James Dunn we know today, he just did Big River at the college, and he got the musical bug, and he's actually fabulous at it. So all the musicals started to happen. One of our major stars of that era, John McDill, here starring as Music Man in 1983. John played many of Jim's leading roles, and Jim used to call him John McMountain because he was so wonderful. And even Marilyn used to say when John strode onto the stage, the whole audience would stand up and cheer because they just loved him so much. But many of these shows were just wonderful. You can see in 1985 getting much more elaborate. John McDill playing Captain Hook. And My Fair Lady in 2004, look at that set. This set is famous in the mountain play lore as having the staircase everybody hated because it was so difficult. I mean, people still ooh and ah over how hard that staircase was, but how beautiful is it? I mean, just gorgeous. Here you see Ian Swift on the left, our Susan Zielinski on the couch, and Ken Rowland, the set designer, playing Henry Higgins. Multi-talented crew. Here again, Hair in 2007. This is Kathy King's swan song with the mountain play. This was her final production, and Susan Z again in the role of Sheila in Hair. It was a wonderful show. Well, Marilyn Smith did a lot of other things too. She was famous for being the kind of person who would come up with a lot of crazy ideas that were marketing ideas that actually sounded really weird, but got the job done. So here's one of them. This artist proposed that he was going to do a portrait of Mary Martin in the year that they did South Pacific. Now this portrait is made out of shampoo bottles, Head and Shoulders shampoo bottles. And it's done in Union Square, I believe, in San Francisco. It did get a little bit of attention from people in San Francisco who wondered what was going on. But there it is. The real attention happened when the board members started cleaning up the bottles and they opened, and the shampoo got all over the place. And of course, you know what happens when you try to clean up shampoo. So it was one of those Marilyn Smith ideas that was fabulous until it got a little crazy. Here's another one of those fabulous Marilyn ideas. West Side Story, 1999. Marilyn and her husband Bob thinking, how are we going to do something great and crazy and wonderful that will just bring everybody up to the mountain play, what ended up being Marilyn's final year as executive director / producer. They cooked up an idea to go to Cuba and bring back a troupe of Cuban dancers. Well, I mean, this was 1999. It wasn't that easy, but if anybody can do it, Marilyn can, and she did. She brought this troupe. They didn't speak much English. It was a little bit hard for the people backstage. Poor Linda, you know. But it was fabulous, and it got in the news, which was the real point. It was a newsmaker. And the show was fabulous, right, Susan? Yeah, it was fabulous. That actually was my first mountain play that I saw. Fell in love with you. Wizard of Oz in 2008 was my first show as executive director producer, and you can see that we're still going on Marilyn's coattails with things like airplanes that say "Surrender Dorothy" and big boom lifts to bring Glinda in and out of Oz, and also to bring the wizard in and out of Oz, because there was a big hot air balloon that was attached to the boom lift when the wizard used it. Darn nearly broke the stage one time, I think. That was a scary moment, but we survived. Jim Dunn really is very, very appreciated for his, what he brought. Among the many things was that he brought this sense of grandeur and wonderful special effects. So those airplanes, I don't know how many people remember, but everybody talks to me about South Pacific when the airplanes flew right over the top of the theater. That was unbelievable. Well, he does that. Here you have a picture of Guys and Dolls in 2010, and I think there were 12 guys packed in that taxi, and when the doors opened, they all rolled out like, you know, cops. My Fair Lady, of course, we're very famous for using animals and horses and cows and chickens and goats and cows. The special effect in Hairspray 2011 is these wonderful hairsprays, which were on cue, and they sprayed, and then there was a sound effect that went along with it. And look at that wonderful set. A little different from the first days of the Mountain Play, right? Quite a bit more colorful and there. Here we have a spread from the middle of the book, which just shows a smattering of the posters from the early days. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see last year's Music Man, and then up in the top left-hand side, I believe that's Brigadoon from 1989. So we had several artists through the years, but you can see When We Branded, right after Hair. There it is. That's what we're going to look like from now on. The most famous marketing gag of all. There's no other famous one. This is the only time the Mountain Play actually got into the national news. We were in Newsweek magazine. And I don't know, and I don't think anybody does, whether Marilyn knew that this was going to happen when she put the poster out, but she says that she didn't notice that this poster was a little odd until it was already out there and distributed. And then Herb Cain picked it up and wrote about it in his column, and then, of course, Newsweek from there. So I don't know. I'm not going to say a thing more about that. So I think right here we're going to go into a little bit of costume history a little bit. You can see Bruce Vieira getting his wonderful makeup for his Wizard of Oz lion. The couple things that are interesting about this show is that it was a little hot up on the mountain that year, and poor Bruce had this big lion costume on. So we actually sewed cold packs into the head and under the ear and in the back there, and we actually put pads underneath his feet to keep him from fainting on stage. Isn't that a wonderful juxtaposition? Good old Eileen. How about that? The old days and the new days. This is Hairspray, Joshua Castro, and his wonderful role as Edna. And then who knows who that lady is? I don't know. And then 2012, James Dunn's Swan Song year. He said he really wanted to have a show on his final year that would be that would have actors of all ages, so that he could bring in as many of his friends from the old days as possible and have it really be a great reunion of Mountain Play stars and friends from the old days. So he pulled together a cast of 55 people. I nearly died. It was a little expensive, but so worth it. Did we have a good time? Oh my gosh. It was fabulous. And it actually was the first play in the last couple of years that actually brought the Mountain Play into the black. We had a little bit of a tough time during the recession. I'm sure nobody else did, but we did. And it was pretty tough. Our audiences shrank quite a bit. We went from 17 and 18,000 in 2007 and 2008 down to 10,000 3 years in a row. And that was a pretty much of a tough thing. And there were times when the board had to really ponder whether we were going to be able to make it to our 100th anniversary. But of course, we dug in our heels by the hair of our chinny chin chin. We said, no way, we're not going to let this thing go. And we didn't. Hairspray pulled it back together, and we now are... The what? Yeah, keep going. So Music Man pulled it back together, and we were so excited to have a wonderful party for Jim at the end of a successful year. So here's what it looks like still up there. This is, I think, Oklahoma. Yes, Oklahoma. And we were very thrilled this year to win second place in the Best of Marin, Pacific Sun Best of Marin, for the second time. So you know how the Pacific Sun does this, is that if you win 5 times in a row, you have to sit back and let other people do it. Well, we're waiting for MTC to win 5 times in a row so we can get first place again. This is just in there so you can see sometimes I do dress up. And there's Jim, Marilyn at our wonderful donor preview. Here's a lovely picture just showing cast in the old days and cast in the new days. And in the book, when you look at this, you really can see the faces, and it's quite spectacular. And how could we have a, this is a cue, by the way. How can you have a slideshow without Pete Sorensen in it? I don't know. So we have, again, what happens on the mountain play. The hiking still exists. Here you see people hiking up with their hats and boots and picnics on the railroad, which is not even in existence anymore. And then our wonderful people hiking these days. And brings us to The Sound of Music, which is our 100th season production up on the mountain. We hope that you all will join us. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our new director this year. We searched very, very carefully all through the summer. Kathy King helped. Pete Sorensen helped. Eileen helped. We worked a lot to try to find the very, very perfect person who could take the helm for our 100th year and direct The Sound of Music. And we found him. I'm so excited to introduce you to the founder and director of the Foothill Music Theater, a person who, not unlike Jim, has been doing theater groups to New York. So he'll bring groups to New York like Jim does to London. Jay will bring groups to New York and do theater and talkbacks and has a wonderful educational program, as well as being a wonderful American musical scholar. He is directing our show this year, and I'm happy to introduce Jay Manley.
Good. I'm on. Okay. And how exciting to be directing the musical version of Abraham and Isaac. I mean, I was overwhelmed when I was asked about this. You know, I love libraries. I'm old enough that I remember how all my life I've loved to walk into a library and you browse and you have to be quiet. And it really frightens me, all of our internet stuff, that I hope we don't lose libraries and lose books, because I can be asked to talk and then I can go, now what am I going to talk? Whoa, I'm sorry. What did I just? Oh, I can put it. Oh, I don't have to talk into that. You can see how untechnological I can be. But no, I was going to look for something to talk about, and here's Harper's Bazaar. Great women of the Bible. Would you like to hear about that? Actually, I'm afraid to go get it now, but maybe there's about the fourth book over on the top shelf there. Looks kind of interesting, that paperback. Huh. It's called The Story of the Trapp Family Singers. And they have it here. So I knew I could find something to talk about. Anything for a joke, okay? They call it the story that inspired The Sound of Music, and it was written, of course, by Maria Augusta Trapp, the Maria. Well, it didn't really start with this book. I mean, The Sound of Music didn't. Because, and to give you a little background and history, a director by the name of Vincent J. Donahue was directing a production of Thornton Wilder's play, The Skin of Our Teeth. And this was a project of the State Department, and the production went to Russia, among other places, cultural exchange. Helen Hayes was in that production. George Abbott, who was a director, and I think he was kind of a fish out of water in it. It was apparently not a very good production. But playing the vamp in the play Sabina was Mary Martin. So, Vincent J. Donahue, the director, Mary Martin playing the vixen in the play. And Donahue had seen a German film about the Trapp family in German language film, but he was very taken with the idea of creating a play starring Mary Martin, in which she would play Maria Trapp, and the play would be about this family. his idea, and he enlisted two very famous authors of the time, a partnership, Howard Lindsay and Russell Krauss. Lindsay and Krauss wrote a lot of, I guess what we would kind of call boulevard comedies, and they were very popular. And they got interested in it too. They looked at the movie and thought, yeah, this could be a great play, and what a wonderful play it would be for Mary Martin. And I have to say that their initial conception was that they would use authentic Austrian folk songs throughout the play, but it was really a play with songs. Then they got the idea, wouldn't it be great to have one original song in the play that would be written just for the production? And so they went to their friends, Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, and said, hey, we've got this great idea. You know, we have the barn. Don't you want to come up and do a show with us? Would you write a song for us? And wisely, Rodgers and Hammerstein, very canny men of the theater, said, no. Either you should stick with your original idea, which was fine, use all folk songs, authentic folk songs, or find somebody to write a whole score for you. And they went away and thought about that and thought, oh, the latter was a pretty good idea. So they returned to Rodgers and Hammerstein and said, we like your second idea. Would you write the score? And they said, you know what? We are in the midst of writing another show right now. And they were on a very, if you know their work, they were on a rather rigid schedule. Every 2 years, they came up with a new show. And if you look at kind of their biography, that's the way it appears. And that show was Flower Drum Song, a musical that we've probably all heard of. So they said, we'd love to, and it isn't going to work because we have this other project. And Lindsay and Krauss and Donahue looked at each other and looked back at them and said, we'll wait, which is exactly what happened. So that is kind of the genesis for how The Sound of Music came about. Now, there's a ton of interesting stuff, and I won't tire you out with it, but Mary Martin was a given for the role. And of course, Mary Martin had done South Pacific with Rodgers and Hammerstein, so the buzz for The Sound of Music was huge, reuniting Rodgers and Hammerstein with two very reputable authors and this amazing star who was then, along with Ethel Merman, considered one of the two first ladies of the American musical theater. How many of you ever saw Mary Martin? Oh, look at that. Oh, one of my first memories of theater was my mother taking me to see a road company of South Pacific that Mary Martin did in San Francisco many years, well, quite a few years anyway, after its Broadway run. And I remember feeling like she was performing for me for the very first time. It was opening night for Jay. And in fact, that was her reputation, that she always had that amazing spontaneity that few actors are able to sustain over a very long run. Okay, tangent. Coming back to The Sound of Music, it's an interesting show because Rodgers and Hammerstein, and we could do a whole talk on this, really were the architects of the modern musical. If you go way back to Hammerstein and Showboat, and then starting with Oklahoma and Carousel, South Pacific, The King and I, these were major musicals that they wrote that really redefined what a musical could do and could be about. But Hammerstein was the author of all of those. He wrote, in other words, he wrote the book, the dialogue, as well as the lyrics. And many people think that, in fact, his singular contribution to the American musical was in his ability to structure a book, to utilize music and dance in a way that they became part and parcel of the storytelling. You've probably all seen Carousel and that wonderful bench scene where Julie and Billy essentially meet for the first time and get to know each other. And little snippets are sung, and there are bits that are spoken, more little snippets are sung. Of course, it evolves into one of their most glorious ballads, If I Loved You. But that was so typical of what they could do. Now, fast forward to their very last show, The Sound of Music. Here, in many ways, The Sound of Music is the most old-fashioned of their shows. As much as we all love it, as beloved as it is, it doesn't have the innovation of their earlier shows, largely because while they were off creating Flower Drum Song, Lindsay and Krauss were writing the book. So they came in and essentially kind of dropped songs into a pre-existing structure, kind of the opposite way that Hammerstein had worked up to that time. Nonetheless, it's a glorious musical, and it's one that touches us, I think, and touches audiences in a very particular way. I mean, it's very much Hammerstein territory. It's about family, it's about human relationships, it's about prejudice, bigotry, because we have the whole entrance of the Nazis who drive the family has to literally escape from. These were all core themes of Oscar Hammerstein that he used over and over and over again in so many different ways, in so many of his works. And in Lindsay and Krauss, at least, he found very kindred spirits who were speaking the same language. So the whole thing really works quite wonderfully. Well, I am so excited to be directing this play. I feel enormously humbled to be joining this family, this 100-year-old family. I'm kind of the new kid on the block, and so proud to be that. You will be blown away by the talent of our cast. We had a huge turnout at auditions, and more children than I could possibly keep track of. And we have an absolutely superb cast. So I know you're going to have a wonderful time, May and June. Come twice, come 3 times, and bring lots of people, because we want this to be just an absolutely memorable and wonderful summer on the mountain, and I know it will be. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here, and we'll see you this summer. Oh, and now the fun part of the evening. You've listened to us talk. You get to hear some wonderful singers. And to introduce them, Eileen Grady, associate producer of the Mountain Play.
I think I'm going to just do this. Thank you so much, Jay and Sarah. Just wonderful. I first became involved with the Mountain Play when I was asked with my good friend Susan Zielinski to produce a fall gala show, and that was the fall going into the season of hair. So that was fall 2006. In my research and putting that show together, I fell in love with the organization. I had been a patron for many, many years, but I absolutely fell in love with the organization. Therefore, I had to join the board. Well, then I fell even more in love with the organization, and therefore I had to be hired and be the associate producer. So I feel very, very fortunate to be part of this wonderful organization. And the first thing that I noticed was the deep sense of family and heart that is behind every bit of the art. So the performers that I'm going to introduce in a couple seconds here are just symbols and magical, wonderful symbols of the many people over the years that have been a part of the background of the art that's been created. Before I tell you about the singers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the person that's going to be behind the keyboard tonight. I was fortunate enough to meet her in 2004, and I've worked with her on many, many galas. I think she and I have done now 20 Broadway reviews together since 2004. But even more importantly than my involvement with her, she's the music director for the Mountain Play. Deborah Chambliss is a vocalist, pianist, instructor, and musical director who has worked in the Bay Area for over 25 years. She became the music director for the Mountain Play in 2007, but has been playing keyboard in the orchestra since 1991 for The Wizard of Oz. She was 2, which makes the story even bigger, I think, really. So I'm going to invite Deborah to come on up to the stage. Our first performer tonight started her mountain play career in the chorus of 1989's Brigadoon. Since then, and this is going to take 2 cards, so stay with me on this. Since then, you have seen her as Maria in 1999's West Side Story, Philia in 2000's A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, Sheila in 2007's Hair, Sarah in 2010's Guys and Dolls, Velma in 2011's Hairspray, and last year as Marion Peru in The Music Man. She's currently also been nominated for Best Principal Female in a large-scale musical by the Bay Area Theater Critics Circle. So congratulations. And I haven't told you her name yet, have I? Does anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? Win a ticket? Good job. This year she's going to return to this Mountain Play stage as Baroness Elsa Schrader in The Sound of Music. But here to reprise her 2004 role as Eliza Doolittle in Lerner and Loewe's My Fair Lady is Susan Zielinski.
I think so.
Thank you, Susan. I suddenly felt like Max at the end of Sound of Music. The family Von Trapp. Sorry. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan. I think it's my mustache. I probably have to wax. We first, turn the tape off for that, please. We first heard our next artist when his beautiful voice opened 2009's Man of La Mancha. And he literally, I would be working the shuttle bus path in the morning and I would stop every time the show started. Since then, we've seen him in 2010's Guys and Dolls, and last year as one of the barbershop quartet members in The Music Man. This year, we'll see him again as Herr Zeller in The Sound of Music. Here to perform the song Come to Me, Bend to Me from Brigadoon is Sean O'Brien.
Thank you, Eileen.
Because they've told me I can't be haughty till wedding music starts playing. To ease my longing, there's nothing wrong in me standing out here and saying, oh, come to me, bend to me, kiss me good day. My darling, 'tis all I can say. Just come to me, bend to me, kiss me good day. Give me your lips and don't take them away. Come, dearie, near me so ye can hear me. I've got to whisper this softly, for though I'm burning to shout my yearning, the words come tiptoeing off me. Oh, come to me, bend to me, kiss me good day. Darling, my darling, 'tis all I can say. Just come to me, bend to me, kiss me good day. Give me your lips and don't take them away.
A newcomer to the mountain play. Our next performer starred as the lovable and lispable Winthrop Peru in 2012's The Music Man. Please welcome the very talented Jeremy Kaplan.
Scrumptious! He told me all about his hometown, Gary, Indiana. And he said he would take me there someday. And he taught me a song with hardly any S's in it. Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, let me say it once again. Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, that's the town that knew me when. If you'd like to have a logical explanation how I happened on this elegant syncopation, I will say without a moment of hesitation, there is just one place that can light my face. Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, not Louisiana, Paris, France, New York, or Rome. But Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, my home sweet home. If you'd like to have a logical explanation how I happened on this elegant syncopation, I will say without a moment of hesitation, there is just one place that can light my face. Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, not Louisiana, Paris, France, New York, or Rome. But Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, my home sweet home.
Thank you, Jeremy. Oh my goodness. So now for something a little different. You've seen there was a lot of ingenues on the mountain, but in 2011, Susan Zielinski starred as Hairspray's Velma von Tussle, the devious taskmaster and snobby racist. The former Miss Baltimore Crab's beauty queen will go to any length to ensure her daughter is the next big thing.
Oh my God, that snake who sings, he's a puppet, but I hold the purse and the strings. God, I knew Negro Day would bring chaos and change. Now he's pushing that pinko who might give us all mange. She's a blemish, a blackhead that must be expelled. There's a standard of beauty that must be upheld. You can say I'm a bigot, but it just isn't true. Look, I love Sammy Davis, and he's black and a Jew. So you'd better get set for this full-out assault. You should never have boiled Miss Baltimore Crabs.
Scared me. 2011's Hairspray brought modern Broadway and the beautiful voice of our next artist to the Mountain Play stage. Carol Thomas starred as the sassy and confident Motormouth Maybelle, and her performance of the show's Ballad of Strength, I Know Where I've Been, brought the audience to their feet and to tears. Carol Thomas.
Skin. There's a light burning bright, showing me the way. But I know where I've been. There's a cry in the distance. It's a voice that comes from deep within. A cry asking why. I pray the answer's up ahead, 'cause I know where I've been. There's a road we must travel, lost so many on the way, but the the price we had to pay. There's a dream in the future. There's a struggle we have yet to win. And there's pride in our hearts, 'cause I know where I'm going. Yes, I do. And I know where I've been. There's a road we must travel. There's a promise we must make. And the riches will be plenty. Worth the risk and the chances that we take. There's a dream in the future. There's a struggle we have yet to win. Use this pride in our hearts to lift us to
Wow, thank you, Carol. I just want to thank all of the artists that were here tonight with us. Jeremy Kaplan. Why don't you stand up? Sean O'Brien. Carol Thomas. Susan Zielinski. And then I want to thank our accompanists for the evening and our music director for this season's The Sound of Music, Deborah Chambliss. And now for the next 35 minutes, I would like to do an interpretive dance of 75 years of the Mountain Play history. I hope that we have enough wine to get us through that. But before we move on to the next step, I want to tell you a quick note about the poster, because the poster speaks to our, Deborah started the interpretive dance without me behind me. There's a little bit of history behind the making of this poster. The image that you see in the background of the mountain is actually from a 1905 Southern Pacific Railroad poster that advertised traveling up Mount Tam and to Muir Woods. The images that you see in the forefront are actually our Maria and Children from the 1985 Sound of Music. So in this one poster, you have 100 years, plus a little bit, and some other organizations featured. So I just want to thank you all. I believe someone else should probably be talking now besides me. I think we want to do some questions and answers, and are we going to drawing, interpretive dance, karaoke? What? Drawing? Okay. Yeah, because I'll stay here. I will. You people will be just, like, when does the Sound of Music start? It's May. I've got tickets. I've got reserved seating. I need to get up the mountain. So someone, I think, is going to bring us some raffle tickets and a little drawing, and thank goodness Sarah's on a microphone. Thank you all very much.
Hi, everybody. So we do have a little bit of time, I think, for question and answers. Do you want me to? Okay, I'm happy to do that. Would anybody like to ask questions about things that they did or didn't learn tonight?
Thank you for putting this on. My
You're
question
welcome.
is, how many people are involved in the Mountain Play? Paid staff and volunteers?
That's a great question. It never fails when I'm in the theater for one of the productions that someone will come up to me and say, "Isn't it marvelous that this is all done by volunteers?" And I think, really? How? Where have you been? Actually, in the beginning, it was all volunteers, and it was TCC volunteers, actually, the Tamalpais Conservation Corps and the Alpine Hiking Club. They were the people on stage playing Tamalpa Indians painted brown. But that no longer happens at the Mountain Play, so we actually do pay everybody. We're a kind of a hybrid organization. We've developed into being a kind of a hybrid. We're not really community theater, and we're not a professional theater. We're sort of a community theater with professional standards, is what Jim made up as our little tagline. So we pay all of our actors. It's not a tremendous amount, but we do. For the chorus members, it might pay for the gas going up and down the mountain all those times. Maybe not. But as I mentioned before, our cast would go maybe from 29 was Man of La Mancha, which is a very small cast for us. Music Man was 55, a pretty large cast for us. This year I think we have 38. So there's the cast, and then there are about 15 or 20 people backstage, all paid, the assistant stage managers, the production stage manager, of course the guy who fits all the little mics into the little packets and makes all the sound work. And then there's people up in the sound booth, myself and the sound director and the sound technician, another 5 or 6 people. All in all, when I do my 1099s at the end of the year, I do over 100 1099s. So those are all independent contractors, and that's not including our wonderful year-round paid staff, Eileen Grady and Natalie Reimer. which the three of us sort of are the all year long people. But it's quite a big crowd. And the thing that's really interesting about them, and something that was stunning to me when I first became involved, was that as I would meet all these people and do their contracts and things, I would learn that not only was the parking guy actually a Shakespearean actor and knew all the lines and would tripling over his tongue, but he has been doing the parking for 20 years. Everybody on the whole play, I would say, wait, how long have you been doing this? 25 years? The choreographer, 27 years? The director, 30 years? It's just one of those things that when people discover it, they fall in love, and it becomes their thing. Deb told me the other day that she recruits the orchestra. We have a 14-piece live orchestra backstage. I know you knew that already. And these orchestra people are really, they're in symphonies. They play for the San Francisco Symphony, the Oakland Symphony. They play for, their field is this, and they're professionals. And yet, when she calls them every year to say, I know you're busy, but would you consider? They all say, yes, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I want to do the mountain play. So it's one of those funny things. We have very top-notch people who just are dedicated.
Thank you. I have two questions. Number two has a part A and B. It's not too complicated. Number one, could you share with us maybe some of the great musicals that have been bouncing around the play selection committees that have not yet been done by the Mountain Play and might be done in the future? And number two, another key part of your production staff, I wondered if Ken Rolland is returning to design sets this year. And part B is, has he maybe done a Buster Posey type long-term contract to come back again, or is he kind of Jim Dunn and kind of finishing up his tenure at the Mountain Play?
That's a great question. I can tell you that yes, Ken Rolland has designed the set for Sound of Music. It's a beautiful set. You're going to love it. He's been working on it since last summer, and it's right now being built up at the Mountain Play. So if you go up there, you'll see just, you can see the stages of the build, and it takes us 60 days to build that thing. It's really quite a thing. It's like building a building, So Ken is the designer this year, and I can't answer the last question. Not Buster Posey, though. We're sort of on a year-to-year basis, all of us, even Eileen and I. You never know when we're going to be. What? She says. And the first question was about, play selection. So play selection is something that everybody wants to know about. And I also think it's funny because it is the very thing that drives people to want to be on the board, because they think that picking the plays must be the most fun part of the Mountain Play. But guess what? It's the worst. It's the very worst. Because when you're not on the board of the Mountain Play, you might not realize that there are a lot of limitations about what kind of plays you can do up there. The first limitation is that, that all plays, like all art, plays are owned by people. They're owned by royalty companies. And what we have to do in order to decide which play is we have to apply for the rights. And we may be given the rights, or we might not be given the rights. And many, many, many plays that are still making money on Broadway are not available at all. They just won't let it go until they're finished taking every last drop of money out of it, and then they'll let the hoi polloi do it. But so the play selection is, number one, challenged by what are the plays that are available for us to rent. Number two is, does anybody kind of want to hazard a guess as to how much maybe a typical royalty fee might be for the Mountain Play? Just throw out some numbers. You said, somebody said 25, Any, how many? 500? 5,000, okay. It's a little bit more than that. Okay, you're getting close. It goes between $55,000 and $85,000 to do a play. So newer ones would be more expensive. Maybe ones that weren't so popular would be less expensive, and of course it varies according to the royalty company, but a huge chunk goes into that. So then you have to think to yourself, can we afford to do this play, right? Then the thing becomes, wait a second, I'll tell one quick story, which is before I got on the board and before I learned anything about the Mountain Play, I went to the Mountain Play and I went to see Forum. I went with my 11-year-old daughter, who peppered me on the way home with questions like, Mom, what's a prostitution? I don't understand what the house of And I had to, of course, answer all these questions on the way home. And I remember going up to one of the guys in charge and saying, what were you thinking? this is a family show. Why did you pick this play? It's so crazy. And he, being a board member who was very politic, said, really? What play would you think would be a good play to have? Well, I went running back to my seat, made a list 12 plays long, which all the ones that I thought would be fabulous, came running back to him with all this list of plays, which I know now to be entirely inappropriate for the mountain play. Because the mountain play is a huge amphitheater. You can't have two people talking down there all by themselves and nothing big happening. It really lends itself to large chorus, dancing, everything big, big, big. Jim used to say bigger, louder, funnier. And so you really can't do, for instance, a chorus line. A chorus line, fabulous show, 2 people at a time, 1 person at a time. It doesn't really work up there. So you have to really think about it in the terms of what actually works up on a big mountain and will keep 3,750 people entertained in the bright sunshine. So there's big limitations like that. So the process really, I can tell you, is that the producers and sometimes the director, when Jim was the director, certainly Jim would be involved in the process. The producers and the director would get together, and they would come up with either one idea or a list of a few ideas, and they would pick the one that was their favorite, and they would bring it to the board and say, how about this one? And the board's job was to say yay or nay. And sometimes the board said no, and we had to go back to the drawing board. But that has been the process through the last 30 years. And I think that Jim and Marilyn tussled a little bit over those decisions. But by and large, it is, we think about what will be a big draw, what will draw people. And Marilyn used to say, if people know the songs, and if they can hum them in the bus line, that's the right play. So we're sort of figuring do, re, mi. Pretty much fits the bill, Sound of Music.
So I've heard people complain about the price of the tickets. And my understanding is that the tickets don't even begin to cover what goes on up there, the cost of a production. So I wanted you to tell us what else we can do to support the mountain play.
I planted her.
She did not plant me.
Oh my goodness, thank
No.
you so much.
Yeah.
You're so fabulous. Okay, the other thing that surprises people sometimes is to learn what our annual budget is. And I'm going to tell you what it is. So this year, it's around $900,000. So $900,000 is hard to get to. I'll tell you that much. Tickets will raise us this year, we're budgeting about $472,000. That's fantastic. That's way better than it's been the last 3 years. We're thrilled about that. But to get to $900,000, what are we going to do? You cannot charge for a ticket what it would take to make your budget. And every person in any theater knows this. No theater can charge as much. I think the ticket prices would be somewhere in the $90 to $100 range if it was to pay for the entire thing. But we all know that's not the way the world works right now. The way the world works is that theaters are mostly nonprofits and that they depend upon their community to support the other 50%, 55% of the cost of the production. So yes, indeed, we go to our corporate friends who step up and support us in the community. We also go to foundation friends who love to support the mountain play. And then we go to dear friends like you who, and individuals who support the mountain play through their annual gifts, through their tickets to the gala, and their purchase of auction items, and their purchase of t-shirts and books. So that's how we do it, and it's always a little bit of a heart attack, but we are this year in feeling very good. The ticket sales are going probably double what they were last year in the last 3 or 4 years. We are at double. So get your tickets soon, because I think this thing is going to be just like Hair and Wizard of Oz. It's going to go gangbusters. So we're really thrilled. Yeah, like West Side Story too. Yeah, West Side Story was the best-selling mountain play ever. And actually, they had to add, it sold out ahead of time, so they actually had to add 1 production. So I think there were 7 that year in 1999. I don't know how Marilyn got the state park to agree to that, but there it is. She gave them half the money. How creative. Anyway, who wants to know who won this raffle? Okay. Okay. I'm not looking. Frederick Least. Frederick Least. Where is he? There you go. Oh, you get 2 Good Any Day tickets to the Mountain Play, and actually there is also, I believe, a voucher for, yes, 2 stadium seat rentals. Very good. Congratulations. Okay. He's going to buy 5 more, I can just tell. Okay, the next winner is Parton, P-A-R-T-O-N. There you go. There you go. 2 Good Any Day tickets and 2 stadium seat rentals. Now, this says 1, but it's actually 2, I promise. Here it is. So the thing, you're welcome. Thank you very much. So the thing about Good Any Day tickets, they're not on sale anymore, but the beauty of Good Any Day tickets is that you can wake up on a Sunday morning and say, huh, you want to go to the Mountain Play today, hon? And there it is, you've got your ticket in your hand. But we only sell them until February 15th, so these are really, really special. Thank you folks so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it a lot. Thank you.